So how did you become a book cover designer?
Um, just sort of happened into it, honestly. I was in school for, I got a degree in English, like many people in publishing. And I was also doing an art degree at the same time. And so at the end of school, I kind of just sort of put those two things together as a skill set and sort of approached some publishing opportunities, and that was kind of happening at the end of school. But I was like the editor in chief of our honors journal at my college, and rather than hire a graphic designer to do the journal itself, I just did it over my spring break and kind of fell in love with the process. And I've been working on books ever since. I'm in my over 1,000 books that I've worked on in the last 10 years. So it's been a pretty even clip. And nowadays I'm doing about 250 to 300 books a year. So the number just keeps going up.
That's a lot of books.
Yes.
So how do you approach the design process?
I often think about books as a physical object, and that's something I encourage people in people I'm working with, whether they're authors or others at the press, or individual clients if I'm working on my own. I'm often thinking about the book as a physical object, right? We trick ourselves into thinking that covers are the only things that we're designing, right? But you're actually designing a product, and that product is three-dimensional. And so when I'm thinking about the front cover of a book, I'm obviously thinking about the market and the content, right? Those are the two most important things. But I'm also thinking about the other applications, and that includes, what's this? When I'm thinking about the cover, I'm thinking about what the spine might look like, what the back cover might look like, and for that reason, I may make certain choices on how to place the art so that maybe it can extend over to the back panel. I'm also, just by the very nature of our digital age, I'm also thinking about what the book cover is going to look like at thumbnail size, because that's important to most of our sales, and because those things go out to Amazon and other distributors. I'm also thinking about what the cover will look like in black and white, because for e-readers, often those covers are displayed in black and white. And so even at the beginning of a design, when thinking about colors and typography, I have to think about all three sort of those applications.
So how do you start a book cover?
We have three designers at the press, and we all come with our own certain, sense of style, and my style tends to be more typographic or type only. And so I often take on projects that are requiring that kind of cover, whether, whoever is sort of, in our various meetings about the cover before I even start design. It might be, a type only or a type centered cover design might be requested for numerous reasons. And so those tend to come to me. And so when I'm thinking about designing a cover, I'm often starting from a place of typography. And that just means thinking about the title, really, thinking about how long the title is, how many words are in the title, how that title can break across lines, whether maybe there's a word that can even be hyphenated or broken in some way. Some of my favorite designs often have maybe the title is 12 characters long or 16 characters long, and so that title can be broken really evenly onto 4 lines. So I'm thinking about type in that specific of a way, and I'm also thinking about obviously the content and the market. And so certain typefaces and fonts lend themselves to certain topics better, or don't, and there may be some amount of historical connection. So for example, I recently did one of my first book covers at UC Press was a book about the Museum of Modern Art's exhibition in Paris in 1938, and the type decisions are immediately narrowed down for me in that way. So I chose to use Dito and Avenir, which are two very stereotypically French typefaces, to sort of juxtapose with this American museum's content. And that's kind of what the book is doing. And so that's kind of an example of how I start. I tend to think about type and And then if I'm provided any images, I try to work those two together.
What do you want authors to know about the book design process?
I think I'm often talking to authors about how we're not that different. And the way that I like to approach that conversation is that, people in publishing, including myself, and authors tend to have this common love of books, right? I didn't become a book designer because I wanted to be a designer. I became a book designer because I wanted to work with books, and it just so happened that I had a certain skill set with art and with design that then I found my way into book publishing. But I do tend to find a common ground with authors that we all have books in our backgrounds, right? And so when I'm talking with authors about their cover, especially for ones that are nervous about that conversation, who think they don't have a good eye, or they don't have a sense of design, or just like they want to sort of emotionally disconnect. That's usually not the case at the end of the day. And the way that I get authors thinking about that is to ask them to pull from their bookshelf or from these archives, these book cover archives that exist online. What books mean something to you? What are the covers that are speaking to you? And this is something we'll get into in a moment. But in our PPI, we ask that question, like, what covers do you really like, are sort of inspiring to you? And then on the other side, we ask for comparative titles from that market so that we can look at both, right? And I think that's really essential to me. Is like, authors don't necessarily need to have an opinion about, what specifically, like what typefaces they want on their cover, but coming to me with covers that they love from their lives really does help me to arrive at a space that I think will make them happy and also makes the market happy. Yeah.
How can authors be partners throughout the design process?
Yeah, so again, we have a PPI, which I don't even know if I know what that stands for.
Preliminary project information?
Mm-hmm. And so that's something the authors fill out for us. Yeah, I've been in this for too long. But the PPI has specific questions about the cover that the author is invited to fill in. And that includes comparative titles and cover image suggestions. And we really love it when authors come with a few options for us to consider, whether they be from some of our stock photography sites or artworks that they think they can get permissions for. We invite authors to come with that material ready for us to start designing. Quite frankly, between the three of us, we have plenty of covers to do throughout the year, and authors that come with more resources on what they want their cover to look like and what artwork they're considering or they want on the cover really helps us to move quickly and get to a happy finished product faster.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I think there's also like a little part of, I wonder, is there also like a part where if authors come with materials, like you have a starting off point rather than designing from a blank InDesign screen?
Sure. Yeah, that is true. Some of the most intimidating projects tend to be the ones where the author has given us a blank slate, and sometimes that can work in our favor. It allows us to do our jobs like to the fullest extent. But other times, we do struggle with that like blank slate process. We certainly couldn't do the number of covers that we need to do every year if all of our projects were blank slate cover projects. And so we do rely heavily on authors' feedback and filling out that PPI in starting our process.